today's video, we'll be painting the Battle Sisters. This tutorial is pretty simple, especially compared to the Hospitaller that I painted last week. So if you are just starting this army, this tutorial should be perfect for you. But let's stop dilly-dallying and get to painting. Before we begin, let's prime the model in black primer. I used Chaos Black from Citadel. Now let's start by painting the armor. I like to base coat the entire armor, backpack, and gloves with watered down Abaddon black. I recommend this step since if you make any mistakes later on, you can easily fix it with the same tint of black. Once that layer is fully dry, we can start highlighting by using Incubi Darkness. I like adding this to the flat areas of the armor, like the shins, top of the knees, top of the chest, the top of the backpack, and the gloves. If you want this highlight smoothed out, you can mix Abaddon with Incubi and glaze the edges to make a smooth gradient. Now we can add in the second highlight by using Fenrisian Gray and highlight the edges of the armor, backpack, and gloves. Let's begin adding in the details on the armor, first by using Leadbelcher to paint the silver details. This should include the cuff on her ankle, the rivets all of her armor, the grooved section on her torso, the tubes on her collarbone, which I recommend using a dry brush to highlight the grooves, and then the metal sections on the backpack. And once you have all those silver sections base coated, use Nuln Oil to wash the sections. After that's completely dry, we can use Runefang Steel and edge highlight the silver. Next up, we can continue on with the white sections of the armor by base coating the fleur-de-lis on her knee, as well as both symbols on her pauldrons with Fenrisian Gray. Now that we have that undercoat done, we can overcoat the symbols in Corax white, and making sure you leave the Fenrisian Gray showing in the symbol creases. Next up, let's quickly paint the gold sections by using Retributor Gold to paint the icon in the middle of her chest and the fleur-de-lis on her backpack. Then with Rakelin Flesh Shade, wash all of the gold. Then once dry, use Liberator Gold and edge highlight both icons. And now all that's left of the section is the button on her backpack, which we'll base coat in red. And then with Mephiston red, let's begin highlighting by painting the lower half of the button. Then lastly, use some Evil Sunz Scarlet to edge highlight the button. And that wraps up the armor. Next up, let's paint her robes, first by base coating the outside of the robes with Mephiston red. Then with corn red, paint the inside of the creases for shading. And also, while you have the corn out, base coat the underside of the cloak as well. I also recommend to use a mix of both reds to smooth out the gradient. Now we can highlight the fabric with Evil Sunz Scarlet, first by using it slightly watered down and glazing the upper creases throughout the fabric. Then with straight Evil Sunz, edge the bottom and sides of the fabric. Before we continue on to the details, this can be optional, but I like to use Agrex's Earthshade to pull it in the hard creases in the fabric, as well as the buttons and buttonholes in the robes. And now we can add in the little details by using Lead Belcher to paint the buttons both on the skirt and the sleeves. And the robes are done. Then we can continue on with the head by base coating her face in Dunbull Brown. Then we can start the base highlight with Cadian Flesh Tone, covering most of her skin except the creases between the cheeks and nose and eyes, including around the monocle. Then with a mix of Dunbull and Cadian Flesh Tone, you can make a glaze to smooth out the skin highlights and shading. I like adding this under her cheekbones for some definition. Once we get that base highlight down, we can do smaller highlights with Kislev, which will be added on the top of the nose, the upper cheeks, upper lip, and forehead. And now we can continue onto the eyes by base coating them in Wraithbone, as well as adding her teeth. Then if you'd like, you can also add irises in the middle of the eyes, and I'll personally use Rhinox hide. Then you can use Bugman's Glow to add color to her bottom lip. Next up, we can paint up her monocle, first by base coating it in Lead Belcher, making sure you avoid the lens. And now we can start the lens by base coating most of the lens in Corn Red, making sure to keep the top right side black if you can. Then, starting on the highlights, use Mephiston Red to paint the bottom half of that Corn Red layer. Lastly, use white to add a little dot highlight on the top right. And now we're onto the hair. Starting off by base coating in Fenrisian Grey, before we can use Corax White to highlight the strands of hair. And you may need to do a few coats to get the strands fully white, but I recommend having the top of her head the brightest. And this section is done. Now onto our last section will be the weapons and accessories. We can start by using lead belcher to base coat the main section of the gun, as well as the blade of the sword. Then with Nuln Oil, wash both the gun and the blade. Once this first layer is dry, use a second layer of Nuln Oil on the top case of the gun to darken the silver. And now that the second layer is fully dry, we can go ahead with Runefang Steel to edge highlight both the gun and the sword blade. Now onto the copper sections, we can use Hashit Copper to paint the canister, the muzzle, the bullets, and the fleur-de-lis symbol on the gun. Let's also use the same color to base coat the sword's pommel and crossguard. Now we can wash all of the copper with Reikland Fleshshade. Once that's fully dry, we can use Liberator Gold to edge highlight all the copper. The gun is fully done, so we can focus on the sword by base coating the handle in Corn Red before giving that a wash of Reikland Fleshshade. Then with Mephiston Red, dot highlight the leather strapping. Let's continue on with the rod on the sword by using Korax White to create the lightning streaks down the blade, and make sure you keep those as thin as possible. Then we can use Watered Down Frostheart to wash it all over the lightning bolts and that little rod nib. Next, we can get her accessories finished by starting with the leather. Unfortunately, I did lose her sword sheath, but you can use this tutorial to paint that as well. But anyways, let's base coat the leather straps and gun holster with Dunable Brown. Then give all of that a wash of Agrax Earthshade. Once that's all dry, use Scrag Brown to edge highlight the leather. Now we can use Lead Belcher to base coat the clasps on both the straps and holster, the gun handle in the holster, and the bottom of the grenade before giving that all of a wash of Nuln Oil. Next up, base coat the grenade on her side with Caliban Green. Now onto the rosary beads on our waist, we can base coat them in Fenrisian Grey before highlighting all the beads with Korax White. Then we can paint the rosary medallion with Retributor Gold, followed by a wash of Reikland Fleshshade. Once dry, edge highlight in Liberator Gold, and your battle sister is complete! I hope you liked today's video. It was definitely a nice... Batman. Okay, anyways, it was definitely a nice break to paint a simple sister tutorial this week, and I hope it really helped you guys if you're trying to get through your big piles of gray shame. But as always, if you have any other ideas for sister model tutorials, just let me know. I love doing them. And also, if you can like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate that. And other than that, we'll see you in another realm.